I'm going to actually start off with a story that Dr. Schwartz is going to be interested in. And if you're a grad student and sitting in here, it's a pretty good lesson in how to apply what you learn. When I was a freshman in grad school, I was working on my liver review, and I read a muscle myology study. And it was the muscle myology study that discovered the Flatiron. And we had a grocery chain in Iowa that still buys primates. So I walked into the grocery chain and I said, "Have you ever heard of a Flatiron steak?" And he said, "No." I said, "Can you, look it up and learn how to cut it? If you can, I'll take every single one of them you can make." Well, he did. He learned how as a young butcher. And I took every single Flatiron steak that they could make out of that shoulder cloth the entire time I was in grad school. Well, they also didn't have a code for it in the sales system. So he sold it to me for 80-20 hamburger price. So we ate flat irons high on the hog for 2 years for 99 cents a pound.
Oh, amen.
Also, another quick one, Matt Spangler and I did a lot of tenderness work. We did it on the McNay cattle, which if you're familiar with McNay herd, it was selected pretty much exclusively for marbling for over 20 years. There's a lot of prime carcasses. Well, we actually killed the cold bulls, and we took a sliver to do the IMF score to get an ether extract number to work on RMF stuff. And we also took a section of the ribeye, and we put 6 holes in every ribeye and did our Warner Bratzlaff shear force test. But we paced ourselves on how many we cooked per day and did the Warner Bratzlaff on. Because if you took a really prime ribeye that sat on a pan for another day and you took it home and you trimmed all the fat off and you ground it up and you put a little mayonnaise and a little relish with it, you can eat pretty darn good for a week. And when you're as broke as I was as a grad student, that was about as high eating as you could get. So a little application of my education on how to save a little money, and I still ate pretty well. So we don't have a super high attractive title to this slide. Not many of you probably want to learn about bylaws, but we will talk about kind of a quick change that we made this year. And in order to do that, I have to explain what the Ultrasound Guidelines Council is and who makes it up. So there's 4 member breed association reps. They serve a 4-year term. In year 3, they are the vice chair. In year 4, they are the chair. And then they age off and are replaced by a new breed rep every year. There's 1 certified field technician that serves on the board for a 4-year term that doesn't repeat. There's 3 representatives from academia, industry, research. We get, several from the university setting. We get several from semen companies have provided reps for some diversity on the board. There's 3 UGC accredited lab representatives. Their term never ends. They've been on the board since the inception of UGC. And then there's myself, who's a non-voting member and the only paid entity of the UGC. I help conduct all the certification exams, do all that kind of stuff. So where we're going to focus in what the bylaw change is centered around the 3 lab representatives. So this is your current board as of yesterday. They were installed by US Beef Breeds Council today. The 4 breed reps are here. Ryan Bolt's the chair. Esther Tarpoff from Angus, AJ Knowles, who's in the room here from Red Angus, and Lance Bauer has joined us from Beefmaster. I'd like to try to keep an eared breed on the board for that perspective. The field tech representative is Kama Bruns. She's been doing it a long time. She's a South Dakota technician. She was planning on being here, but her husband synced all their cows to breed yesterday morning. I think he's still alive, but she didn't make it. The 3 industry reps, Scott Greiner, who's here from Virginia Tech, Lindsay Upperman, who used to be at Red Angus, who has now shifted her role over to ABS. And then Troy Rowan joined us from the University of Tennessee today. The 3 lab reps, Mark Henry from Cup, Becky Hayes from Alternate Sites, and Rico King from Iliad. Again, they've been on the board for a long time, and then myself. So if you don't recognize the maybe the logos of the labs that represent us, here they are. ILI is actually based out of Arkansas. Ultra Insights is actually wrong. They moved. They're in Wyoming now. And then the Cup Lab is and always has been in Iowa. I think it's important to point out that the location of those labs really no longer matters. Everything is shipped electronically with some speed and ease. So we don't really worry about location of labs anymore. So why the change? We'll talk about the change here, but why? The three approved labs are three competing for-profit businesses that sit in the same room. All three have been on UGC since its inception, which I'm not a historian, but I think it's roughly 2004. The other 8, what I'll call rolling board members, have 0 to 6 years of experience on the board, and sometimes 0 to 6 years of experience with ultrasound. The learning curve is not the same for all of them. And what ends up happening in the meetings is we spend a lot of time on history instead of on the future, because we're trying to catch all these rolling board members up on what's been done. The problem with that is this is a technology. We should not be focusing on what has happened. We should be focusing on what we're going to do. This is probably as simple as I could put it. There are probably 30 people attending this meeting right now that have served on the UGC board, and I don't think any of them would disagree with this statement. The meetings get pretty uncomfortable. The reason for a lot of that is many of the ideas that are put forth are proprietary. So there's some lack of being willing to share things because if you're a competing business, you don't want to tell your competition what you're planning. If you are from industry or you're from a breed association, your perspective is much different. You're more concerned about maybe the science or how fast it goes or how quickly you can get data in and out. So it creates a dynamic, and I searched high and low for a word to describe it, and this is the best I could come up with. There's just a lot of fatigue on the board. There's not a lot of forward thinking and what's going to happen next with ultrasound as it is now versus what ultrasound maybe could be from a carcass standpoint moving forward. So the what? US Beef Breeds Council met at NCBA in 2024. The idea of making this bylaw change was from Jerry Cassidy, who was an Angus, now he's a Wagyu. He was the chair at the time. So he basically made a motion to pass a bylaw change to move the 3 laboratory representatives to non-voting members. They would still maintain their board seat because we still want their input. They're very important as to what they do in the process. But it moved our model to much more of a service provider, kind of like genomics. They have the test, they provide the service. The breed association determines if what they're doing fits their breed's needs or if it doesn't. The other thing that was pretty significant to change, if you're going to remove someone's board vote, you probably don't need to make them pay dues. So the old system was 10 cents per animal for the lab, 10 cents per animal for the breed. That fee has never changed to my knowledge. So the new fee is 25 cents and the breed associations are paying all. There's a $250 membership fee that both entities pay, and that did not change. The other minor thing, and this doesn't really matter for the degree of this talk, but the US Beef Breeds Council and UGC, the accounting was merged. What that basically means is they asked me to take over management of their money for no additional pay. And I said, yes, because that's what I said. The accounts are still separate, but the reason that is important is we can now pool our funds to do some things to move forward. And there's a sizable amount of money in there that we can maybe leverage. So what's happened since then? Obviously, this isn't something that happened a long time ago, so we don't have a bunch of changes, but I can tell you with certainty that communication between the U.S. Beef Breeds Council and UGC has dramatically improved. When I started in 2017, I would say the communication between those two groups was very minimal. I'm in conversations with them often now. The UGC board members do seem to share a bit more openly. Some of that awkwardness has been a bit alleviated. And there is sort of a renewed combined focus on potential research that we can do to improve carcass ultrasound. I think it's important if they're paying the bill, not every breed wants the same thing, but some of them do. So what can we do in terms of collaborative efforts with research foundations? A lot of breeds have them. They are willing to support some of these efforts to make ultrasound better. So maybe how can we combine efforts of breeds to move us forward? So how the process works, U.S. Beef Breeds Council is the governing body of UGC. I am merely an intermediary to carry out the wishes of the breed associations. I work with the labs work with the techs try to get better data for the breeders. That's the natural flow of how the carcass ultrasound industry should work. In the last few years, since I have been at the helm, I have really never understood why UGC was unwilling to share carcass information with the labs in order to help them improve. Every bit of carcass data that we have taken since 2017 has been offered to the labs in order for them to improve IMF models, test their technicians, all of that. It is very expensive information to collect, ether extract. So let's use that for everything we can possibly get out of it. And I do believe this. We've been at this 25 years plus. The science and the process can still improve. We're still finding things that we can do better. With technology and the onset of things like AI, this thing could be much different, even in a year from now. We don't know. I will tell the room that every year, at least once, I am reached out to by other companies wondering how they can enter this business. And they vary a bunch. A lot of them are from the human side. Most of them are overseas. Some of them are in the ultrasound sector, but not in livestock. So hopefully this change allows me to take their ideas and see if the breeds can utilize them, or see if the labs can utilize them, or see if the techs can maybe use them to make it better. I haven't found one yet that fit what we currently do. Most of them struggle when we tell them that they have to make it mobile. It has to go on ranch, and it has to be able to move because not all the cows are in one spot. That's a big hurdle. Will some of them get there? Yeah, I think they eventually will. There's my contact info. Again, not a revolutionary change to what we do, but I'll take any questions.
Questions from the audience? Me, it's sure to got one. I'm curious, I have had more than one breeder tell me that the ultrasound technology would no longer be used probably in the next 5 to 10 years. As a UGC, how are you and your board trying to address that? Or accounting for that? If that's what the industry folks thinks.
Yeah, and I heard that a long time ago, and it still hasn't happened yet. I do think they're gonna have to come up with something much more revolutionary than they have so far. 5 years ago, I heard genomics was gonna take us over and all we had to do was pull hair, and that was a lie. You know, every time a new technology comes out, we're supposedly gonna just have to do less, and it's never really happened that way. So I like to look to the future, but I'm more on that front. I'm gonna cross that bridge when we get there. Right now, I think we can make the technology better. We don't have anybody staring double barrels down our face that's gonna replace us tomorrow, so.
Another question on UGC, at least if a new technology comes on, do they have to follow the guidelines of 1 ribeye, 4 IMF longitudinal, 1 run fat to get their technology certified?
That's a really good question, and as it stands right now, do they have to follow the protocol of at least 1 ribeye, at least 3 IMF images, 1 run? The way our certification is structured, the answer is yes. If they came up with a technology where that was, 1 image on an IMF was good enough, and there was no fallout in terms of accuracy of the IMF reading, why would we make them stand there and take 3, 4 more? So I think that that could be addressed. I've also, wondered if a breed association is not or has not or ever will not use rump fat, why are we shaving their hip and taking it? So I never really have got a good clear answer on that. Some breeds have migrated away from that. And if you're not gonna use the data, there's no reason to take it, in my opinion.
Oh, that's a good question. Yes.
I mean, are there new machines on the horizon that might give us?
New technology.
Yeah, are there new machines on the horizon? The Achilles heel of carcass ultrasound, in my opinion, is the lack of competition on the machine side. Currently, there are only 2 companies in the world willing to make a carcass probe. Do they come out with new versions of those machines, updated versions, much like a laptop continues to update? Yes. But right now, there's only 2. Some of the companies I mentioned that have reached out to me. When I tell them we use a 17-centimeter linear probe, they're like, oh. It's the only application for that probe is to use in carcass scanning. So they have some decisions to make if they're gonna enter this business the way we currently do it. But to answer your question, no new people coming online to do this work. There's tons of ultrasound companies more focused on repro, and those types of things. Very few want to make a carcass probe. There's only 125 technicians in the world. That's not very many sales for a company like that.
How often is recertification required?
Okay, how often is recertification required? So a brand new tech has to come through and pass twice. We have a set of standards put forward, you have to scan so many head, your image quality has to be so good, and you qualify for what we call in absentia certification for the next 2 years. So you certify, you get 2 years. Come back again, you get 2 more. If you do enough cattle, all you do is send in an application that says your image quality is good enough. I check with the lab, they say yes, you get 2 more years without having to come to Canyon. But the way our rules read right now, we get carcass data behind every machine active in the industry every 4 years to make sure that there's no fall off. We've talked about this a lot. It's tough because it's really expensive for a tech to fly across the country to Canyon every 4 years to get their machine looked at, and we charge them $775 to go through. So it's an expensive business to maintain. So 4 years is kind of a happy medium where we get access to the machine, make sure it's still working.
You mentioned the cost of ether extract, and this may be a Dr. Lawrence, Dr. Schwartz help. What's UGC's board's kind of thought process? Can we move away from ether extract and go to camera? Marketing score, what were you at on that?
You're digging into my weeds here, but I've already thought about this. With the combination of US beef breeds and UGC, and how many years we've been coming to West Texas and taking data, can we go to marbling school? Can we quit doing ether extract? I don't know the answer to that question, but I think the answer is probably within the data you have. So next step is you gotta tell us what it's gonna cost. Good question, yeah.
I don't know if you answered this question. Who's gonna answer the question whether it's good enough?
That would be the board.
And the reason I question, you said you have the data, but UGC has the data to answer that question. That's what you meant.
So West Texas takes all the carcass data, and he has that file. I do too. He's got grad students that would be able to analyze that are in the meat science world. Could I do it? Sure. I'll be honest with you, in my position, I'd rather not. I'd rather an unbiased source from a university setting with the oversight of somebody like Dr. Lawrence give me that answer.
Research scientists on your board, don't you?
What's that?
You have 3 research scientists on your board.
Yes.
Keep working in conjunction.
Would the board be in a position to get that analysis done then, so we can move forward with that?
That's a good question for those individuals. I try to toe a fine line because they volunteer for this board. And that is a sizable time commitment that they would have to pull that stuff together.
Dr. Swartz is working on a proposal right now to send to you.
Excellent.
He's not got anything else to do. Other questions from the audience? Thank you all for attending the session. We appreciate it.